Well, now is the time for our last speaker, Tim Moss. Well, Tim is Registrar of Companies for England and Wales and Chief Executive of Companies House since 2012. He joined Companies House in 2002 and has held many senior positions within the organization, covering operational and corporate functions and leading the digital transformation and various legislative reforms. As you already know, he's currently president of CRF, and he will be the next, or he is indeed, the next director of the conference for next year of ECRF in Cardiff. So you have the floor, Tim.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be here. I think in Spain, traditionally, you have a siesta. My job is to keep that siesta for at least another half an hour or so and try and keep you awake. When I was first invited to talk about this topic, I thought, it's interesting. I think one of the real advantages of ECRF and CRF and IACA and ASLRAC is it brings together registries from across the world. And although at the heart we do very similar things, we get information in, we make it available. We all have different ways of doing it. We have different legal backgrounds, we have different legal systems, some that come through business ministries, some that go through courts. And the key thing for us is, what can we learn from each other? What are the good things from each system? What are things which will maybe pose us some questions? And I think the topic today is absolutely the heart of things that we can share and learn from each other. So let's move on. A little bit to start with around Companies House. Actually, Companies House doesn't exist in the UK. Actually, there's only the Registrar or the Secretary of State. It's a statutory office holder, and I have some simple functions. I create companies, I kill them off, and we record a few life events that go on in between. And then we make that information available. So that's what we do as a registry, and that's common to many of you as well. But I think one of the things we've been doing over the last couple of years in the UK is going back to basics and saying, why are we here? What's the purpose of the registry? I think it was interesting listening this morning, thinking around, registries don't operate in isolation. They are part of the economy. They're part of the national infrastructure, and really understanding what is our role and understanding the whole end-to-end process of getting information in, getting information out, and what is done with that, by the economies that we serve. And for me, the registries are very much around being an information exchange. And I know for many registries, register awful lots of different entities, but certainly for us, the main thing we register is limited liability companies. That makes up 98% of the UK register. And our role is to try and make limited liability work. At the heart of that concept, a director, shareholders have limited liability. The price of that is transparency. And that's how it works within the economy. And I think certainly one of the things that I want to focus on within this presentation is there is a balance to be had. There's a balance between limited liability and transparency. There are balances that we strike all the time between ease of doing business and certainty about information. Now, where do we draw that balance? And different registries have different ways of looking at that balance, and there's some of the things that we want to look at. So that's their basic functions. We operate, and our role we view as an information exchange, get the information in as quickly and efficiently as we can, make sure it meets the statutory requirements, and make that information available in whatever ways our customers want. And we do that, we still have paper, we have digital systems, and increasingly, and the future, I think, for registries, if you think about the world we're in, the information world we're in, it's about digital data in and digital data out. I can't quite say that the end of paper is nigh, but at some point in the future, we're about information. We're living in an information world, and it's about digital data. In the UK, we have quite a rapidly growing register. We have 3.5 million companies. It's growing by about 200,000 a year. And we have a very active process. And it was interesting looking at the survey this morning around new companies being formed. And it's about 15% of the register is being formed each year. And just under 10%, or around 10%, is coming off each year as well. So quite a dynamic situation. And on the back of that, we're getting 9 million transactions each year updating the register. Right, so lots of information coming in, and the question is, well, okay, what do we do with it? And what's the sort of philosophy that's underpinning the UK registry? Well, we support the economy by making limited liability work. And really it's about how can we make the registration process as easy as possible, but also ensuring that we get good integrity and quality of information so that ultimately there is good corporate transparency in the UK and it can really support the economy that way. And there are sometimes some tensions between easy registration and integrity of data. And I think one of the things I hope that we can have in the Q&A session later is let's have a discussion around some of those issues. You know, where are the trade-offs? Where are the balances that can be taken? Because on the one hand, you know, companies, actually, they'd rather not give you the information. It's a burden to them giving you the information. They don't actually necessarily use it. It's other people that use it. So any system where you have somebody providing information who doesn't have the immediate benefit and someone else getting the benefit, actually we need to understand how that process will work end to end. But what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve a strong legal framework that will be suitable for very, very small businesses, right the way up to the global companies. Probably it's around 80% of companies in the UK have 2 directors, 2 shareholders. We only have 7,500 public companies, and probably of those, only maybe 2,000 that we would consider to be large sort of multinational companies. We also need to understand the legal framework within the UK. Some information, when it comes on the register, such as incorporation, takes legal effect at the point that I incorporate the company. A lot of other information, it's just a record of what's gone on in the life of a company. When that information appears on the register, that is not the legal proof. The legal proof actually sits with the company. And that's the way the legal framework is set up in the UK. So if a company appoints the director, the appointment occurs in the company. The law requires the company, within 14 days, to notify the registrar of that event that's taken place. But the actual legal certainty around the appointment of the director sits with the company. And the company has a legal duty to supply accurate information to the registrar, and it is a criminal offence not to do so. And there are penalties for not doing it. So we have a mixture of things that take legal effect, like incorporation, like the registration of a charge, like the change of a registered office address, and we have other events, like the appointment of a director or a change of a director's details, which actually don't have legal effect. So a real mixture within the legal framework we operate within. So what are we doing to try and work within this balance? Well, I think there are sort of 3 or 4 areas that I want to just explore slightly further. One is absolutely, what are we doing about integrity of information? Within the legal framework that we operate within, what are we doing to actually make sure that we have good quality information? Because no matter what registry system we have, we all want to have good information. The registry is only as good as the data that's on it, and it needs to and should be of high quality. Having said that, there is also a reality, and again, it'll be interesting to debate this later. Any big data set, and as a registry, we have over 170 million images of documents, we have over 300 million pieces of data. You will have errors in any big data set. Whether they are errors due to information not being kept up to date, or whether they're errors that are down to the actual accuracy of the information, there will always be errors. The question is, what's the level and what's acceptable? So, lots of work on integrity, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Really important bit around compliance. Yes, it's also about making sure we have low burdens. That can actually also be, low costs and low burdens can actually also help the quality of information, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And I think the other bit that is really important for quality of information is actually access to the data, and I'll touch on that later as well. So, when we talk about quality and integrity of data, I like to define it in 3 ways. Is the information complete? Is it current? And is it correct? And I'll take those 3 things in turn. So complete. Everything I do is defined by statute and the law. I can't go outside of it. I'm a creature of statute in my position. So I need to make sure the information a company gives me meets the requirements of the law. So part of that is saying, let's make it really easy for companies to give me that information. And predominantly it's around getting digital information. It's really impressive to see some of the things that are going on in Norway and the level of digital take-up there. I think in the UK we're around about 83% of everything we get in is digital. Accounts, we're falling slightly behind you. I wish we could get to 100%. That's our real aim. We're about 65% at the moment. But having really good digital systems enable people to get the information in quickly. Also, actually, the real advantage of digital data systems is you can build in so many checks at that point. And we can make it much easier for customers to get it right first time. So any process that involves rejecting documents, rejecting information back, actually will slow down information getting on the register. Actually, a percentage of those you possibly won't ever get back in again. So you won't have the information. So how can we make it sure that people can actually give us the information, get it right first time? And that's about reminding them when things are due. It's about providing the guidance and help. And it's also making sure that the transactions that we have, whether it be through third parties, whether it be through our own web systems, have sufficient checks in place that ensure that the customer can get it right first time. So work on getting it complete. Then current. And again, we have different systems across Europe and across the world. In the UK, every company has to file at least 2 things a year. No matter what size it is, no matter what shape it is, no matter what its purpose, every company will have to file a set of accounts, even if the company isn't trading. And every company will also have to file an annual return, which is the details of where it's located, who its directors are, who its shareholders are, as well as various other pieces of information, what are its activities. And that's a legal requirement on every company, and it gives an annual confirmation that the information on the register is accurate, because the company is presented with the information we currently have, and then they sign on the dotted line or electronically authenticate to say that information is correct. And we put a lot of emphasis on making sure companies do that. Our current rates, we have 99% of companies are filing their accounts, and 98% of companies have filed their annual return. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in this sort of forum is actually how do things compare. There's lots of good comparison data in the survey, but actually there are other more specific things. So, things like compliance, how good we are at getting information in. Love to talk to other people around what their experiences are, what they're doing to help get information in. But we believe we have high levels of compliance, which means the information on the register is current. And if they don't supply that information, then we move quite swiftly into active enforcement. Within a couple of days of not filing a document, we will write out to the company and say, you failed to meet your statutory deadline, and give them 2 options. Either you supply us the information, or we'll actually start to say, well, actually, maybe the company isn't in existence, and we'll take you off the register. If the company responds to us, we'll go through a process of compliance with them to get them to comply, or ultimately, we will prosecute them. And we prosecute over 2,000 directors and companies a year for failure to file information with us. But if we get nothing back for the company, within about 6 months, that company will be taken off the register. We have legislation that's changing in October this year, which will reduce that time period to 3 months. Again, saying if a company is not live and not active, it will be off the register. Again, an important part of having a current and accurate register. So it's about effective dissolution, effective enforcement, but also making sure that it's easy for people to comply. If a director changes their address, actually, what's the incentive for them to send it to the registrar? It's a burden on the company. If it's a complicated system to get that information to the registrar, they're less likely to do it. If it's really simple and easy, they're more likely to do it. So having low burden, easy systems can help get compliance and get information in. Now, traditionally in the UK, we focused a lot on the first 2, complete and current. And lots of questions have been raised, and I've been in various forums where people say, okay, yes, but in the UK register you can file anything and it doesn't matter. And probably in some respects in the past we're guilty a little bit of that. We were very, very passive in the way that we looked at these things. But that's changed over the last couple of years, and we're much more proactive around looking at issues around accuracy and whether the information is correct, whether that be through enforcement, through dissolution. We have a dedicated team that's now actively pursuing issues like around the accuracy and correctness of the information that we have, and we work an awful lot with other agencies. I'm actually quite limited in the powers that I have to pursue companies, but there are other bits of government, whether it be the tax authority, the law enforcement agencies, our insolvency service and others, who have a lot more powers to actually be able to do things. And also it's important about actually understanding what customers are saying. So we work a lot with other people, and I said that's just a handful of organisations that have more powers than I do to actually deal with issues. And often, if there's a problem with the information on the register, it can actually be a symbol of something else that's going on in the life of the company. Whether it be a tax fraud, whether it be an actual law enforcement issue, a number of other things. So how well we work with others is a really important part of our work on making sure the information is correct. But also, I believe access to data has an important role to play in this as well. And really there's a principle that's out there, again, useful to discuss. Many eyes improves quality. When you have 170 million images, when you have over 300 million bits of data, actually it's difficult to look at that all the time and review it. But the more people that are reviewing it, the more people that are looking at it and raise a query with it, and if it's easy for people to raise a query on that information and feed it back to the registry, actually we can do more with it. So one of the key things that we're doing in the UK, and this week is a really key week for us, because we started making all our data available for free. So every single piece of data, every image, every bit of data is available free of charge from this week. And part of that move, not only because we believe actually a registry is here to provide information, so let's make it as easy for people to access it, but also the more people that are looking at the data, we'll get more comments back. We'll then be able to look at the underlying quality and make improvements. And actually we believe it's a great way to support the economy, and we've seen evidence to say that new businesses are setting up to look at how they manage and can use the data. And our data is widely used. I think one of the key questions that we have is actually what's the purpose of the register, and it's for a whole range of reasons. Registry information can be used in some major contracts and bits and pieces where you need a higher level of assurance. But it's also used in a wide variety of ways. The vast majority of information, actually most of the things that people look for, are some basic data about a company. Does it exist? If it does exist, where is it located? Now that may lead on to further inquiries and further things, but it's about understanding the needs of our customers in accessing data on the register. And we have a very wide use of information, whether it be members of the public right the way up to the large organisations like a Dun & Bradstreet or Experian, who take all our data on a daily basis, as well as lots of other people in the public sector. For me, the role of the registry is about making the information as available and as accessible as possible for a whole range of needs for customers. And we're doing this through a modern RESTful API, allowing people to very simply access the data. You can go onto the site now, just put in the company name, get all the details, access all the documents, free of charge, almost in real time. There's also an API which will allow anyone to interface with the systems and do system-to-system transfer of data as well and access it in whatever way they want. So really good, quick access to data. And just to finish, I want to leave us with some questions, because I'm not saying that the UK system is the right system. The UK system has grown up on the legislative background that it has, and different countries have different legislative systems that work in different ways. But I think one of the great advantages of this forum, and we talked, I think, first thing around it being trust and openness in terms of the forum, is saying we can come here and we can have a discussion and say, how does your system work? How does our system work? And different registries. Some have pre-registration checks and lots of work up front. Others rely on actually saying the company, and the premise for the UK is that the vast majority of people in the UK are good people who give you good information. So do we target the many or do we target the few in the way we do our checks and our burdens? There are potentially some balances around lower costs and burdens versus checks and greater certainty. And the big issue around ease of doing business. Filing burdens versus search burdens. You could put lots more burdens on the registration side to try and give more certainty to the searcher. But actually, should you provide more easier benefits to the filers and say the searchers have to do more? If I was going to do a detailed contract, I would probably look at multiple sources of data on who I was going to do business with. Or I would look at things that maybe a business register can't do. But that's just the way the UK system works. And I think one of the questions that is really good to discuss is to say, is any one system better than another? And better for what? Better for the registry? Better for the underlying economy? Better for growth? better for the law and legal certainty? I think there are questions around, is it good or good enough in terms of the data? Because that depends what it's being used for. And we may have different levels of certainty depending on what we want to do with the data. And I think a big challenge for us in a good way that we share is what role will technology play in the future about trying to bring some of these balances together and hopefully, ultimately, get to a point where we can have really good, easy systems with high levels of certainty. But one of the questions we've been looking at in the UK over the last 6 to 12 months is there any evidence? What research has been done to say, how do you compare different registry systems? Whether one is better than the other? Or what are the good bits about one and could they be combined with other bits from other? Because there are trade-offs to be had. And maybe one thing that we should discuss as a forum is, actually, if there isn't any evidence, and if you've got some, please, I'd love to see it, is that something that we should consider doing? Trying to compare some of the different systems that exist across the region and saying, actually, could we present some evidence? Say, what are the advantages of one system over another when we look at the overall economy as a whole? So I will leave you with those questions. Hopefully you found it useful. Thank you very much.